Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Adwukta.
This is Merps. We are almost done with the Taverns of Time arena, and to cap this event, we have with us a special guest today, Educated Collins. Collins, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Hello, guys. Nice to see you guys again. I'm Collins, Infinite Arena streamer, probably. I don't track, but I was number 4 with Shitty Bunny. He was number 2. Took me out. Feels bad, man.
But feels terrible, man.
Yeah,
you guys do co-ops together too.
Yeah, I do a lot of co-ops with him, and I also stream myself, play a lot of smooth jazz and things like that. Have a good time and enjoy yourselves. Hope you guys are.
All right. I like that.
So,
I was about to ask. I was like, "So, Collins, tell us about yourself." And you're just like, "I'm taking this into my own hands."
So what Collins hasn't told you yet is, so we've known Collins now for like more than 3 years.
Yeah,
like
3+.
3+ years. He's one of the original arena streamers from like the post. Like there was a period of time where all the big people did arena, like you got Trump, Hafu,
Right.
Crip, and all that. And then afterwards we started streaming and some other people started streaming. And so that was like, Shady was streaming, Collins, you were streaming. And then you disappeared for a while, but you've been back now. And we're so happy that you are back. So this is like a real like vet from the very beginning of this game.
Yeah, it's nice to be back. Very much enjoying seeing the community again and having all you guys socials, say hi and show your support. It's great.
Okay, all right. Well, Collins, we do have actual substantive stuff to talk about today. This is not just an award acceptance, all right?
Oh, thank you. Okay.
But yeah, we want to have you on because you've been streaming a lot, you've been playing a lot, especially in Taverns of Time,
Right.
and let's talk about the event first, right? Like the event that we've been playing for 3 weeks, and for me, what seems like a lot longer. So.
Oh my God, it's only been 3 weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it feels like almost 2 months we've been in this meta.
Let's look, Collins. Let's just start it off. And we've had this event, right? Taverns of Time, new cards, a lot of sort of like deck manipulation stuff. Just what did you think about this event generally?
So in general, I thought the event was interesting. The last event I really saw was like the dual class event where they mixed classes together, and that was really fun, really interesting. This was a particularly unique thing because you get cards that you've never seen before, that you've never played with. You have no idea how they interact, how they work, what's strong, what's not, and you kind of have to learn as you go, learn as you play, and it brings a lot of new people in. So you're fighting a lot of people that you don't really see before, and then you kind of have to make your own judgment. What cards are good? What cards are playable? What cards are must picks, never picks, and that kind of things, and you learn from it. However, it did. Once the meta started developing and you kind of knew, oh, what I need to do, what cards I need to pick, you can kind of see the discrepancy between the power levels of like decks you can see, where you're fighting a lot of people that know how to play giant. You're just like dealing with that, or you're playing lots of Cavern Dreamers or lots of random kooky concoctions, temporal anomalous meta. So once that started happening, you started seeing that meta. You kind of understood, okay, I gotta join the dark side, play the giants as well, or suffer the consequences of that.
Yeah, it definitely when they did the rebucketing and the giants, the rate in which you see giants in the meta doubled. I think that was the turning point. Like before that, there was a Cavern Dreamer problem, but that was just mage. There are only so many mages. Like the highest possible percentage of mages in the arena is like 33%, right? Like if you're a normal player, and if you like go to the end, maybe you'll see a little more mages. And it wasn't like that misbucketed. It was misbucketed by like half a bucket or 1 bucket, right? It's not the end of the world. But giants, they were everywhere. They were neutral. They were in every deck. Warlocks can do ridiculous things with them. And it really kind of turned for me there. Like, I was having fun with Taverns of Time, and then the giants came in, and I adapted to it. Got my 12 wins, and then I was like, I really don't want to touch this anymore.
Yeah. So Collins, I think it's interesting that you pointed out. It's like, oh, all these things that you have to adapt, and like you are mentioning all these skills that I think is very important. And you know, it's these skills that help players get better in any sort of meta. I will say that the one thing that kind of bothers me is the fact that they do take away what like is actual arena for 3 weeks, right? So you can develop all of these skills, but one of the problems, it's like the specific skills that you develop, like, you know, the meta skills for Taverns of Time, it's just like, what's the point, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of wasted. I guess maybe for this month, I would say you kind of see who can kind of be the best Taverns of Time person if you even did 30 runs per se. But in terms of things you're taking away, once the event ends, you kind of like what classes you're picking is going to change drastically, right? If you want to get the highest wins, and what strategies you're going to implement also doesn't, you kind of lose that too, because if it's more aggressive, you're not really going to be picking those exact same cards because the values change. So it's useful in the meta, but once that's gone, you've lost a lot of those abilities. They don't translate to the next.
Yeah. So let's say I am a like a not casual, but like kind of an average arena player, and I'm playing in this meta. I'm trying to adapt to the meta, and I'm, you know, sometimes good at adapting it, sometimes not, depending on which meta. But for you, Collins, how many games, like not games, maybe like how many runs does it take, because you feel like you've more or less like that you've like 95% of the way adapted to this new meta? And was it any different than like if a whole new expansion came out?
It's, for me, it's basically like a new expansion. Honestly, I don't know if I can tell you that I have adapted 95%, because I know when I've adapted 95 is when I can play priest and do whatever I want. That's like that's my
that's your barometer.
Yeah, that's my bar level. If I can priest it up and just like go as greedy as I want and still win, and I'm getting there, right? But it's not fully done. And I've played almost like maybe between the co-ops and things, maybe like 60, 70, 80, and maybe probably more, right? And I still don't feel like I've gotten quite there.
Wait,
but I
80
think
runs or 80 games?
80 runs.
Holy crap.
Like,
well, I mean, we're talking about like actual players, not people like us who
yeah,
only
I know. I'm just, but like it's like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 runs a day. So,
jeez.
And you know, during the
yeah,
week,
no, that
so
would add up.
Yeah. So
yeah,
but I would say like I kind of understood the meta within like the first like 8 to 10 runs, right? But once the patch switches, right, then
then you have to readapt. That's fair.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So we've been in the patch meta for something like 12 days right now.
Yeah. So I think I kind of understood it like by the second day, I would say.
Okay.
So
gotcha. All right. No, that's good. So Collins, I want to get your thoughts on sort of like how the event was for you. Like just in terms of like a good, bad, what'd you find good about it? What'd you find bad about it?
So an unbiased
completely unbiased, yes, definitely.
It's not gonna be so basically the class I have the most fun playing is priest, because you can do a lot of things with that class specifically that you can't do with any other class. It's like the only class that you can really just steal everything that you want, and just like there are a lot of game states that are not possible with any other class besides priest, just because of the mechanic of stealing cards and using them against them. So I had a lot of difficulty playing priest at the very beginning. I played traditionally like a minion style priest, where it was very greedy, but I had the minions to back up the early game, and I couldn't play that at all. It did not work. So I kind of have to adapt to a more greedy style. I played a run with Shady, and he kind of showed me that style, and I implemented it to my own style. So while I was playing in the beginning, I didn't really enjoy it because I had to kind of succumb to the mage Cavern Dreamer meta. I had to succumb to the Warlock. Time Bound did it. But as I, learned the intricacies of cards and what cards. There were a lot of cards I was using before in a lot of classes that just got a lot better because of the introduction of Cavern Dreams and Time Bounds, and just like Death in particular for Crushing Hand in particular. Things like even Polymorph, Flame Strike.
Yeah.
I used to skip Flame Strike for Fireball. Now it's
Mhm.
like, oh, I want the Flame Strikes now. And I had to kind of adapt to
Ah.
the new meta. And once I was able to adapt, I was able to kind of enjoy it a lot more. But it still wasn't the best. Mages were number one. I dislike mage. I don't. So anytime mage is like at the top, I'm like, oh, just not, please, just make it worse. Just
Okay, would you rather have priest on the very top or mage on the very top?
I would rather have priest because I do a lot of priest, right? So
See, this is the other perspective. Please talk more about this, because because Merps and I just like crap on priest all the time in terms of whenever priest is on the top, we think it's a terrible meta, and when mage is on the top, we're like okay with it. So, what is so bad about a mage meta, and what is so what is so bad about a mage meta compared to other metas that you've seen? Like, just
because
as a general thing.
There's no gameplay involved when they're gonna meteor you, they're gonna flame strike you, they're gonna fireball you, they're gonna blizzard you into cone of cold.
Okay,
pyroblast.
Okay, all right. Let's simmer
Collins
down for a second.
does not like it when he is frozen or when 10 damage is dealt to his face.
I will say, look. Judging from like the BS levels of cards, I would say mage is not that high in terms of they have very powerful cards. I would say
mage is pretty high.
Yeah. Well, no. So here's the thing about meteor. Like let's say meteor and flame strike and fireball. They are predictable cards, right? And in today's meta, that is all you can kind of ask for: predictability, right? Because you have a lot of these, like you have so many powerful cards, and now powerful cards are almost synonymous with like variance, right? Like you have all this variance, and that's why I don't like. And at least for mage, do they have super powerful cards? Yeah, but what turn they're on, and they're usually high, like fairly high mana cost, and exactly what they do, right? So that's the thing that I am okay with.
So how's that different for let's say priest?
No, well, with priest, and here's the thing with priest in the previous, but I think priest is like okay-ish now,
like in Witchwood
these cards,
and like
I think Witchwood priest is fine. The things that we were complaining about before is like you cannot have priest with like Potion of Madness and all of that like dumb stuff, right?
I do admit stuff. I wasn't around for that.
So that's why.
Okay, yeah.
It's good, Collins. It's good that you weren't around. It would have destroyed your love for priest.
Like, here's the thing, and I do think like even now I would prefer a mage because I think there is still a bit more predictability with mage because.
But priest is an unpredictable class.
Yeah, it's an unpredictable class. And then that's one of the problems with it. Like, so when priest is number one, when you factor in the unpredictability of it, that means it's like supremely powerful. Like with mage, because of its consistency. Yeah. When it's number one, you're just like, oh, it's just sort of like any other meta, right? Like consistency wins out. When priest is number one, you're just like, oh my god, things are so wrong. Like, how is priest number one? So
there's
that's
a lot of me in the meta.
It's all Collins.
What I've gotten from this is Collins is better at rolling with it, and Merps and I are like control freaks that feel very vulnerable whenever we're dealing with a meta in which a class that is very unpredictable. Like we also hate like when Shaman meta's on the very top. If that like in the very rare times that happens.
I can kind of thrive in the chaos, and that's Shady has an issue. Same thing. Like he's like, I hate that. I can't do it. Let me know what the stats are and how to deal with this. But
right.
Like, just dodge steal, top deck your answer. It's fine. And you're like, no.
Right. That's the thing, and also, in the state that we're in now, right? Like Witchwood, especially, like we don't have all the AoEs that we did before the rotation, right?
Yeah.
Like the AoEs have been cut, and then priests were one of the classes that still have like a very pure AoE, right? Like
Yeah,
so,
priests
like, we're
have like
yeah.
you mean right now? I think priests have like almost insufficient AoEs. Like I was
Yeah.
talking
No, no, no,
about
no.
this with
I meant they have one of the only
one of the like as an individual card, Psychic Scream is
as an
insane.
individual
Yeah,
part. Psychic Scream is one of those. You have Lightning Storm, you have Consecration, you have Flame Strike, but those are all like you have to set it up, right? People
Right.
can really play around it.
Right.
No one can really play around Scream. Like you
Yeah.
play around Scream by not
Not
playing
playing cards. Yeah.
But yeah, so
Stasis
that's-
Dragon, come on. I love Stasis Dragon. That is like the one
No.
card I'm actually gonna miss.
Really?
Yep.
I think the design is good. I think the design of the card is good. I'm not saying it's like supremely powerful, and that's kind of what I like about it. It's a well-designed card.
It activates both archetypes at the polar ends. It activates your aggressive archetype because now you can do something with your mana that helps your tempo that doesn't subject you to worse board clears, and it does something for control where you can play something that you can then double-sided board clear and not be affected, right? You like force your opponents to play more into it. Like it's such a good like anti mid-range like card because it kind of sucks in a pure mid-range deck. But it's something that
it's funny at the highest end of greed it sucks.
at the highest end of greed.
Yeah, if you're full greed, like I can't play the card. It's always a 6 mana do nothing.
because you've already won the game afterwards, or because you can't afford to lose that tempo because you're already booked.
To play 6 mana and do nothing.
Yeah.
Or if I'm 6 mana, I don't need a 10/10. Like a 6/6 is fine. Like it doesn't. And also it's a card that you can't force your opponent to trade into, right? And so a lot of times people play Stasis Dragon against me, and I'll have like a polymorph waiting or a death waiting, and since it has rush, it can't go face, right?
Mhm.
I will like do nothing. I'll just clear the rest of your minions. Then you open up this 10/10. You can't go face,
Mhm.
and then I'll just like mind control it or something. I'll just death it. I'll polymorph it, and then it's just like you spend 6 mana, and I just like.
Yeah, but you get something out of it, right? You spend 6 mana, you still kill something on the board with the rush, even if it's not like the best target before it gets removed.
I mean, I'll have nothing on the board.
That's fair. If you're playing very control, you would have nothing on the board. Yeah. Usually that's not... See, very different styles, right? Like, I'm usually on the aggressive side when I'm playing with a curve, and so I use it as a way to dodge like what you players like you try to do, because you're trying to do something and you need me to commit into it. And this is a way for me to use mana and not commit. Because otherwise, you get to a certain point where you're like, I could do nothing, I guess. Or I could draw cards, but I can't improve my position. Because if I do, you play any kind of board clear, whether you're a Warlock or a Priest or a Mage or whatever. And I'm like, or even if you're Druid with Spreading Plague. And I'm like kind of screwed. And this is...
I can definitely see that.
It's a good way to like hide beneath it. And when I play control decks, I still have my curve, and I can afford to go down and like lose the tempo. Whereas if you're being even more greedy, you may not be able to afford that loss of tempo there. Like you're taking too much face damage and things. That's interesting. Okay, so we were getting kind of off track on this whole mage versus priest debate, and I know Merps is very passionate about his anti-priest stance.
I mean, one final point, because you also asked the question. You're like, well, what if priest is number one now? First of all, priest doesn't become number one unless it has BS cards.
Yeah,
right.
That's why priest is not number one now. Yeah.
Right.
I think priest has BS cards, like a lot of them.
No. Not just BS cards, like supremely overpowered, easy to use BS cards that the general population can use.
That's
right?
the thing, right?
Yeah.
They don't have easy to use BS cards. They just have, but they have a lot of BS cards, but they're not easy to use.
I mean, that's priest. That's the whole design of priest. They're supposed to be BS. Whenever they do anything, it's all conditional. But as soon as they do it, you're like, oh crap, and they're like, yes.
But you can't give them BS cards that are so powerful and so easy to use, like Cabal Talon Priest, Potion of Madness, like those
Dragonfire. I have an issue with Dragonfire as well. Like it's too strong too. Yeah. So I have no idea what you're looking at.
There's a bug. There's like a big bug. I'm scared. Hey, please go on.
Like,
Don't
by the way,
look at
that's a
me.
physical bug in Merp's apartment, not a bug with the game.
Yeah.
I could come over, take it out.
This is wow. Like handyman Collins helps your arena game and your wussiness in terms of bug fear. Anyways,
but yeah, so if you're looking at like just in terms of like BS cards in terms of value, and I think that's the difference, right? Like Merps is talking about BS cards not just in terms of overall value, but in terms of swing more like if this card triggers, so many things have happened and I just lose. Whereas for Mage, it's usually they're not that conditional. Like things just kind of like happen, and then it causes a big swing because it's a very powerful card. But the power level is just high, and Paladin kind of makes it even further, right? Paladin has even higher regular power level cards, but the swing is not like terrible. Whereas the Priest swing kind of gets insane. So if you look at like our tier list, for example, Mage has as many really super high powered cards as Paladin, and no one else even touches them. Like no one else is close. Priest is very low these days. Like that's why Priest kind of sucks right now. And I know Collins will disagree with me because I've seen Collins do like the most ridiculous stuff with Priest. Like just in times when I'm like Priest is barely playable, I'll like tune into Collins' stream and I'm like, why is this deck like 8-1? Like this is the not functional deck.
I'm very used to playing that style, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you have a style and you're very good at it, you can kind of do things where people are looking at the deck and like how does this work, and then they have to watch you play the whole run, and then they're like, okay, I can kind of see it,
because I still don't know. I don't get even 50% of it, even after watching like one of your runs do something. I'm like, I see in theory how this works, but it shouldn't be that much power or consistency, and it ends up happening. And so, from my perspective, you're just like high rolling a lot, but you do it with enough consistency that you're not. Yeah, but you can't just be high rolling all the time because there's a good amount of consistency in what you do. But it is true also that like if you're trying to play a high roll situation, when it doesn't high roll, you just have a bad run and it ends kind of quickly. And so most of the time you're in a good situation just based on the fact that like your good situations get you very, very high, right? Whereas if you would play like a mediocre deck that will always get you 6 wins, for example, you could have a 6-win average, but you're not going to get 12 wins a lot. Whereas if you play high roll Priest, like even if the average quality of your deck is less than whatever, it's going to high roll, which is kind of the point. And then you're actually going to get a 12-win consistency of maybe even higher than more like, otherwise consistent decks. Because when you like draft an actual not functional deck or when you low roll, you get like a 3-3 and you're out and you're fine. Whereas I'm still like struggling to get that 6-win on my terrible deck that kind of has a curve and kind of works, but not really. Like 0% chance of going more than like 8 wins.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
So okay, that's enough about TOT, Taverns of Time, I think. And I think the overall consensus, and we're not even there, right? Like me and Merps have each played, I don't know how many runs in this, but like and I can only imagine how I would feel if I had to play like 80 runs of Taverns of Time. Because I played like, God, have I played even 20? I may not have even played 20 runs of Taverns of Time.
Wait, so Collins, did you go for the leaderboard this month? Like in Taverns of Time?
No, I don't.
Just wondering. Yeah.
I don't really go for leaderboard. Shady was like, let's do leaderboard. And I was like, sure. But normally I feel like, so the issue I have just for me to aim for leaderboard is that it means I have to restrict like the classes I play.
Mm-hmm.
So basically I end up playing like the weakest classes. It's just like, I have some sick perversion or something. But
you and me both.
Yeah, I just pick the weakest classes. So yeah, so if you catch the stream, you'll see a lot of random classes that you don't normally see because I don't have to focus for leaderboarding. I can just pick whatever I want. So
I mean, you could always split it up, right? Do 2 accounts, one for leaderboard that you just get your like 60 to 50 runs, and if you play that many runs, and you can chill out with your other
nowadays I could do that, but before I have like I have this freedom, it was a little bit hard to split it up, but I could definitely pull that off if I want.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Sounds pretty good.
Uh,
And I agree. I think we've talked enough about Taverns of
I have one
Time.
last
I think we
Taverns of
could
Time
have.
question. I have one last Taverns of Time question.
Oh, okay. All right. Go right ahead.
Okay. So my last Taverns of Time question, Collins, is let's say I'm Blizzard. I'm trying to develop the game, and so far my arena-only events have been Dual Class, and then they've been Wildfest with with 9 additional cards, one for each class.
I remember that.
And then it's been this event where they created 30 new cards and then stuck them in the arena. And now I'm developing another one because it's so consistent that we know one's coming in the second half of whatever the next meta is. So probably around October, November. What would your advice to Blizzard be for that event? What would you like to see? How would you do it differently, or which of the previous ones you like the most, and why?
I haven't really thought about if I made my own arena event. I just want something that I can, learn for or take away from. I would like to be able to maybe challenge people with arena decks or stuff like that, but there's no way to make a deck and then fight specific people, and you're kind of you're fighting random people. Have you ever fought random streamers and things like that? It's exciting for some reason. I don't know why. I remember fighting Shady. I'm like, oh yeah, let's do this. But you can't really do that. You can't draft 5 copies of cards or random concoctions. You can't make a constructed deck like that. So if you could kind of build an arena deck and save it and then have a weekly challenge fest or a deck with that kind of thing. Build a deck. You draft during the week and then you save a deck that you've run, and then you have a day to run the deck you've saved or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I like that because it kind of preserves.
It's coming off the top, so
yeah. No, I mean it preserves arena, which is what I like about it. These 3 weeks have been once they mess up a little bit in the meta, right? The Giants thing was literally it was them. First of all, the Giants thing happened when they were trying to help things
to help
by taking away Cavern Dreamer, and it did. Cavern Dreamer was definitely, I felt, a lot better after they made the change, but then Giants got worse, and then the last week and a half was kind of and it's a little bit long and you can't play the regular arena. So any change in which you can either play the regular arena or the arena feels kind of like the regular arena, I think that's appreciated. I think that's a lesson, especially for Blizzard, right? If they're taking something from this Taverns of Time experience, because this is the most high effort event that they put into the arena so far, and I don't know, they have the numbers we don't. I don't know how many people they converted to the arena. I don't know, how successful they think this is. But I think they definitely, did something in the middle that made the whole experience actually worse for most people.
You should also try an event where they remove MC Tech, see how that lives.
I want to say that should be an event called Regular Arena. That's the event I want this change to go with.
I would love that. Yeah, just to see if the arena destroys itself by not having that one card in there. Maybe.
I mean, you're gonna blow some of the original designers' minds when arena stays around. Yeah. It's so weird. They took away Flamestrike, but not MCT. Remember when they nerfed Flamestrike? I think it's no longer nerfed anymore, but they made Flamestrike go down to 50% off rate, and they left MCT alone.
That's because everyone complained about it.
Yeah,
that's it. That's the only reason for Flamestrike.
Well, everyone's complaining about MCT now.
Well, no. The general public complains about Flamestrike. The arena community complains about MCT. You see that, right? You don't see anyone complain about MCT in the Hearthstone subreddit.
Yeah.
Which is that's the only difference. When it gets complained about in the Hearthstone subreddit, like Vicious Fledgling, right? Like Abyssal Enforcer, that's when it gets nerfed. When it is only in the Arena HS subreddit, it's not just it's purely a subreddit kind of thing. It's the mindset, right? Yeah. It's the part, how many people, what kind of people complain about something. That's basically it. And with those cards, yes, they're powerful, but really, in terms of what they nerf, that's kind of That's the criteria here, right? They've established that.
Yup. Okay. All right. Well, let's go to the Witchwood meta now. So we're coming out of the Taverns of Time and into the Witchwood meta, and you've done like 80 runs in the Taverns of Time meta. How many runs, Collins, did you do in the 5-day post rebucketing Witchwood meta? Because right before the Taverns of Time event, there was 5 days in there where there was a whole new meta because they added the new buckets the in-between buckets. And then some things moved a little. I think I played like 4 runs during that time. I think Merps played like 2 or 1.
Yeah, something like that.
So we're
The
like...
in-between buckets.
Because we know right now, instead of 7 buckets, you have like buckets that are like half one, half the other.
I probably played around like 15 or
15 runs. Okay. So... what do you think about that meta? Because that's the meta we're going back into, but with like a slight twist with the new patch. So tell us a little bit about what you expect us to see.
Okay, so the meta, once they added the second tier of buckets, right? It honestly didn't change much because of the fact that people just play what they know, right? So I still saw a lot of paladins, a lot of rogues, even though I feel like rogue they got nerfed for some reason because you don't see a lot of rogue in this expansion period. But even if you fight rogues, you don't see a lot of Valspines or kidnappers.
Yeah.
Right. If you get hit by one of those two, you're like, wow, they have one. It's very weird. But
every rogue I've drafted has been sad. Not because they've necessarily been bad. It's just very not fun not having any of their powerful cards.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're going to get hit a lot once the meta switches back. Not because they've lost cards or anything, but just because of the bucket change, you don't see a lot of the quote-unquote like OP rogue cards.
Okay. But hasn't that always been the case?
But I feel like they're understanding more what's actually OP, and they've bucketed into the mid-tier bucket, so you see them less.
I see. Right. So for those of you listening, if you're in the top half of the very top bucket, if a card is put in there, like usually the best class cards are, then they actually get offered half the frequency than they used to with this in between buckets change that happened 5 days before the Taverns of Time event. And so a lot of that may affect all the the rogue cards. I can see that.
Yeah, the best cards you see half as often now.
Yeah,
which hurts a lot of it hurts Druid a lot. Right, you're lucky if you see a UI. There's been decks where I've had offered 4 UIs and I didn't take all of them, but it was
right.
offered. Right, that's not happening anymore. Same thing. It hit mind control. That's the big thing for Priest, where I don't get mind control every deck. Where beforehand, I would get mind control every single deck.
Interesting. Mind control is in the top half of the top bucket.
Yeah, and
okay.
I think it's deserved if you but whatever. But that even though they buffed Priest, where you see more great cards, like more deaths, more free from ambers, I think Scream is also in the top half of the top bucket. Yeah. But you see more maybe Primordial Drakes. That's actually, you see a lot of those.
Yeah, because Primordial Drake is in the second half of the first bucket. So
yeah, but because you see MC less, it hurts my play style. But if you're a bit more not as reactive as mine, or
more on the board, yeah. Because
Shadow
Word Death is in the second half of the first bucket, and I like Shadow Word Death better than Mind Control.
Yeah, and I don't.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a different way as we play Priest. And for the record, Colin does much better with Priest than I do normally. So probably stick with that.
We have just not been that great with Priest.
Oh my god, what was it starting 2 years ago? Priest win rate just started falling off compared to average.
I think I just hate myself when I play it. It's not the saying or not really this, basically if you don't have confidence, you don't play well. I think also when you hate yourself while doing an activity, you also just don't.
I think that's fair.
Well, yeah. At least that's how I sleep at night. That's how I convince myself how I'm such a bad Priest player.
Okay, and for our listeners who are wondering about this and what other changes there are, I'm gonna put some not numbers, but just like facts behind what
Yeah.
Colin was saying about Rogue. Every single Rogue class card in the first bucket is counted as being the top half of the bucket. So they've all had their offering rates reduced by half. And you can see this right now, even in the Taverns of Time meta, like compared to what it was like last month, for example. You don't see backstabs, eviscerates, saps, SI7, Fedori Striders, Revolve Spines. That's like a large decrease, right? Because that's every single one of their top cards. And the same treatment happened with Paladin.
Right. Yeah, you don't see Vine Cleaver at
Yeah.
all. Like I had a deck recently with 2 of them. I'm like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, and for Paladin, the list is True Silver, Consecration, Blessing of Kings, Aldor, Steed, Vine Cleaver, Call to Arms still, for some reason, and Dino Size. I remember Taro was talking about it, and he's like, he thinks there's a bug. Like, there's no way Call to Arms should be in the like top half of the top bucket. It shouldn't even be anywhere near the top bucket. But Blizzard's probably using very old stats.
Right.
And, you know, Paladin wins a lot of games, especially for, like, most, like, casual players, because it's an easy class to kind of understand and do stuff with. So, yeah, those two are going to be hit. And even more so, Collins, we were talking about this before we started the podcast. You were mentioning that the patch, that balance, like the micro-adjust balance patch, right? That came a week and a half ago. And what were the classes?
They nerfed Druid and Paladin, and then they buffed Hunter and Priest.
Hunter and Priest.
Was
it Priest or was it Shaman?
It was Priest.
It was Priest. Okay, so they buffed Hunter. Was it Hunter? It was Warrior. Well, it was definitely Warrior.
Oh, Warrior and Priest.
Warrior and Priest, maybe.
Yes,
yeah.
Warrior.
Warrior
right,
and Priest.
Right.
There we go.
That's right.
Yeah, me and Collins both got half of it wrong. But
together, you guys could be even more wrong. Oh man.
Okay, so that adjust was on the so if you don't know, there's something called a micro adjust by classes, where they take the top cards of a certain class and they adjust it down or up by a certain percentage, up to 30%. And we're pretty sure Rogue has always been like adjusting down by a very high percentage, and Paladin got adjusted down even more than before, because I think they were not adjusted to the max of 30% before for whatever reason, and now it seems like they will be. And you could tell, right, that Paladin was not adjusted down by 30% because you kept seeing all their great cards. Like, whereas for Rogue, even before the changes, you weren't seeing that many like eviscerates. So that's a change that will definitely hurt Paladin, and they were number 1 before the Taverns of Time cards came in, so who knows where they're going to be now, but it's supposed to hurt them a little. And what's the other one that was knocked down? The other one was Druid. Druid was interesting because at least on HS replay win rates, Druid went up. We kept saying Druid was good all throughout May. And we had a lot of success with it, and you had a lot of success with it. Shady had a lot of, like, people were doing well with it. Good players were doing well with it.
I was doing really well with Druid.
Yeah, and it's that like aggressive on the board kind of like play style, which also synergizes with Drafty and UI. I think, like, if you look back 7 or 8 episodes, we had a whole podcast on like just like Druid and how to play it. But that got nerfed, and I don't know how that's gonna affect Druid, because like the top bucket, besides Ultimate Infestation, right, which has an obvious effect, are like Ancient of War, Swipe, and Tortolan Forager. These are not cards you need to build a good Druid deck.
Swipe, maybe. I could argument for Swipe.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, because it's flexible in that it can be aggressive and can be defensive. So I could see Swipe and UI, of course. But the other two is whatever. Who even picked those cards? Sometimes.
Oh man. Yeah. I will say I'm kind of just like, with all these changes, I am looking forward to seeing the new meta, right? Like, because before I was sort of just like, all right, well, when we first heard about the event, I was like, all right, well, this is just, the TOT event is just going to be sort of a speed bump on the road of the arena, right? Like the normal arena. Yeah. But really, we're coming out the other side, and like, things are going to be very, very different. I think we can kind of predict, like, like we're doing right now, what's going to happen. But we do have to not only relearn everything that you knew, and 3 weeks ago, I think everyone's going to be a little bit rusty. But yeah, like the changes are going to hit, and with the arena, right? It's like you have a small change in a couple, like couple of the top classes go down, 2 of the bad classes go up a little bit, and then everything sort of like affects everything else. I definitely want to play warrior, like once it reverts back again. I just want to see how it goes, right? Like how aggressive I can be, but then again, the taunts are back. Anyway, sorry, that was
I was about to say warrior is
like,
not going to
oh,
actually
wait,
go up.
nah,
Nope, the taunts are back.
I feel like Spellstone Warrior has always been good if you can draft it, and you should be able to draft it more. So I think if you go Spellstone Warrior, you should be fine. Like Taunt Warrior, I've never been able to get the consistency that I wanted. I've been practicing it, but it's never been like super clean. Where I feel like I know exactly how to play this stuff. But
The
I think
problem with Taunt Warrior is you kind of need a Gorehowl. And you're almost guaranteed to get a Gorehowl these days if you play Warrior, but
and Warpath, you need Warpath.
Warpath, right? And Warpath is like very lowly bucketed, so that's not going to be a problem. But you also have to draw Gorehowl once you put it in your deck, and you don't want 2 Gorehowls in your deck, so it's like kind of an odd setup. Like that's what I've struggled the most with, because if you end up with a whole bunch of weapons, like why are you Taunt Warrior? Why not just be Spellstone Warrior? Like the point of Taunt Warrior is to not have like 6 weapons, but to instead have like 3 or 4 and be okay with it. And maybe have like 1 Spellstone. But yeah, Warriors, if you're looking at the top buckets being increased, you're increasing Arathi Weaponsmith, Bloodrazor, Frothing Berserker, Militia Commander, and Gorehowl. So that's 2 4-drops. Well, Militia Commander, questionable 4-drop, but kind of like 2 4-drops. Bloodrazor maybe also be a 4-drop, and Frothing Berserker is a great 3-drop, and then Gorehowl. So it's definitely like this is a good series of cards for Warriors to get more of, and they're kind of all good in almost any Warrior deck you can put together.
Yeah, I don't think they're the best cards, though. They're definitely high quality. I'm surprised to learn I know I see the bucket all the time. It makes sense, but every time I see that bucket, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll take one of these. I don't really care.
Collins jaded by the top bucket.
Oh man, yeah. I think that's definitely like the biggest change, right? Like and I think that's like the best change they've done in recently. Just like very cleanly gotten rid of the most oppressive cards. Although it is weird because it's the one thing that like makes it inelegant in a way. It's like it gets rid of UI, but it also gets rid of like mind control, which isn't that bad, right? Like
Collins thinks mind control is one of the best priest cards. So
I mean, it's in terms of swinginess, though.
What?
Like
mind control is a huge swing. You play an 8-drop, it's theirs. How much bigger of a swing do you want?
Yeah, but then you just don't play like the 8, or you try to like
don't play cards.
Well, no, like I'm not saying it's.
So I mean, this is the difference, right? Collins not only uses mind control well, but he also hates facing mind control because he plays bigger decks, and so he always gets screwed by it. I have a feeling. Whereas if you play Hunter,
I save my mind control for their mind control.
Right. Whereas
mind controls first.
Yeah. Whereas if you're Merps, like no one cares, right? If you're hitting face, Merps with the face game and the Hunter, they can take your Savannah Highmane and you don't care, right? Like it's turn 10.
Oh, I'm totally. Dude, Savannah Highmane doesn't taunt.
Exactly.
That thing doesn't do anything. Like. Please take that from me.
I get annoyed by mind control, but it's certainly not like one of the most problematic cards when I'm like facing a priest.
Yeah, I mean the problem I have with UI is not only does it deal 5 damage, puts out 5/5. It's like on the next turn they are definitely going to have an answer to whatever you play. Yeah, because they just drew like 6 cards.
6 cards, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the dumbest part of it. It's like any sort of reads you had are gone, and also it's like, dude, they just drew like basically a 5th of their deck. They're gonna have something now.
Plus, they get health. it's
Plus
like
they get
you
right.
can't even
Yeah,
finish
it's
them off.
terrible.
You're like, it's so dumb. Whatever.
They really just needed to get rid of the armor. Like the armor makes it like so annoying.
Because
But-
it triggers spellstone too, right? So then the next turn they're
Yeah.
hitting you with like 4 power spellstone for 1, so they just like they immediately like fix up the board because they get an instant.
But it's the ultimate infestation.
Well, you know what? How they can nerf it, and make it appropriate. They nerf the stats of UI and then call it like mediocre infestation.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Middling infestation. Not
Slightly infested.
Yeah,
Deal 3,
exactly.
draw 3, gain 3 arm. Summon
And
it.
put out a 3/3. That would still be pretty good.
And for
Like,
10
that-
mana. Yeah.
Like
I'd
that would
do
still
it.
be draftable. That would still be draftable.
What do you mean
It wouldn't be,
draftable?
like,
That would still be
OP.
top bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something like that. But anyways, like, sorry, I derailed this a little bit with the UI versus mind control thing. But I think that is one of the best things that they have done, right? Like, they took what is considered to generally be the most oppressive and the strongest cards and said, okay, like, they're still going to appear, but we're going to sort of make sure that these are rare, right? Like that these are bombs and we're going to make them bombs. So
Well,
Collins, like you said before, you don't get to draft or have the chance of drafting 4 UIs, which you have had before, right?
Offer. I have.
Yeah. Right, yeah. But offered 4 UIs, like, that's just dumb. That shouldn't happen.
It's dumb. Yeah, it's very dumb.
So I want to point out that the 2 classes that they buffed, the vast majority of their cards. So first of all, they're not classes that do well generally in that meta. I'm guessing Warrior and Priest. And second of all, like Warrior, 4 of their 5 cards in the top bucket were placed in the very top bucket. And for Priest, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 5 of their 7 cards in the top bucket were placed in the top half of the bucket. So in those 5 days, in that 5-day meta, these all went down a lot, right? So Collins was talking about the mind control, but it's like a whole bunch of other cards too, and same for Warrior. Whereas
I don't
if
pick them, so I don't care about them.
you just care about the
Like,
mind control, screw the
it
Cabal,
doesn't
Shadow
stick-
Priest, and the Psychic
doesn't-
Scream.
Okay, Cabal Shadow Priest, I love that. I always pick it, but it's always rare to me. So it's always like an extra bonus. Mind control, I felt like I get it every time. So it's like you're flexible, but the Cabal Shadow Priest is like a smoothie on top, like a cherry. And then Scream, I don't pick Scream. I don't like it.
You don't pick Scream? Wait, hold on, back up. You don't pick Psychic Scream as Priest being
Shady
greedy.
Shady tells me this too.
So that's why when I watch you, I'm like, why is this a weird like control deck and that doesn't have Psychic Scream even? Okay, so why not Psychic Scream in a slower control value kind of like deck?
Because I usually play an on the board Priest. That's the usual style. So it's a deck with minions, oracles, and things like that. So I can fight for the board. I'm the type of priest you'll never beat late, but I can kill you turn 5 or 6. So
Wait, you're playing aggro priest?
No, it's not aggro. But if I get my 1/2 drop, my like 7 3 drops, my 4 and my 5, I'll kill you if you don't have anything, right? But if you get to a late game, I'm mind controlling your stuff. I'm free from ambering. You're not gonna match me card per card in the top deck war. But if you have nothing early, you're going to lose. So you can't do nothing against me, but you can't win the late game. So you have to mid game me. You have to win the mid game. So that's basically like the weakness. You have to just. I'm not gonna tell you.
No wonder you hate Stasis Dragon. That's the deck that Stasis Dragon will be awful in. But yeah, okay, that makes sense. And that also makes sense for the cards that you like here. So that's Priest and Warrior. They had their cards knocked down, and this change in the offering rates is gonna bring them kind of back up a little. So I think it's more fixing a problem than it is like some kind of like big balancing thing. Because if you look at the other 2 classes that don't do as well, or like the other 3 classes, the other 2 classes that don't do as well, by the average player, like back in the day using HS replay stats from last month. You have Shaman, which almost all of their, like all except Fire Elemental, has been in the second half of the top bucket. So none of them have been penalized by this new like in between bucket change, or like the Collins calls it the tier 2 bucket change. And if you're looking at the other class, which is Hunter, all the cards besides Houndmaster for some reason, and Flanking Strike and Crushing Walls, and there are a lot of Hunter cards in the very top bucket. All of them are in the second half of the top bucket. Like there's over 10 cards in this bucket. It's like 12 cards or something. So Warriors basically, like Warriors and Priests, I wouldn't look at them this like adjustment of class balancing on this micro adjust as making Warriors and Priests top end cards appear more frequently. I would look at it as a mitigating factor on how much their top end cards have been taken away for no real good reason as an unintended effect of these middling buckets. And so you're going to still see, let's say, Bloodraiser less than you used to see it in May, because there's no way that they up the micro adjust by 50%, right? So you're still going to see fewer than you did last month, but it's not going to be as bad. It's not going to be like a half the rate.
Yeah, I've played a lot of Priest and Warrior in Taverns of Time, so I've seen like what it feels like.
Yeah.
So you see less of the top buckets, but you see a lot more of like the like I guess tier 3 to 5. So like the in between, but so there's a lot of like really high quality cards.
So like Holy Nova, Norshar Cleric, Shadow Ascended, Nightscale Matriarch.
Yeah, you see a lot of them, but they're not constant, but because of there's a lot of cards in the buckets and you only get to see 3 of them.
Yeah.
So you'll see like a Matriarch, a Cleric, and like a Frost Rider, right? And you're like normally beforehand you'd be like, where's the Nova? You know, but now you're like, okay, so there's a ton of cards in the bucket, so you're seeing like a lot of weird stuff, but they're all high quality cards. So that's what happened to the Priest and the Warrior. There's a lot of high quality cards, but they're not the same cards. Because I remember when they posted the bucket, the first picks were always like, what was it, Dustbreaker, Free from Ever.
Yeah.
Like, what was it, Death or something?
Shadow
it was
or
like
Death,
the same
Mind Control.
Same 3 cards.
Yeah.
Like, and same thing with Paladin, right? You'd see like Stonehill, Maul, Crystal Lion, like just like the same thing, right? Now you're seeing like Stonehill with other things, right? And you see a lot of high quality cards, but they're not as you don't see the best.
Right. So you're seeing like bucket 2 cards and the second half of bucket 1. So what you're seeing a lot of now in Priest is, and you're going to see a lot. So the offering rates that's going to go up the most is going to be the second half of bucket 1 cards for these 2 classes. Right. So these cards are Shadow Word Death and Obsidian Statue. You're going to see a ton of Shadow Word Death and Obsidian Statue, and you're going to see more than you used to see of Holy Nova, Norshar Cleric, Shadow Ascended, and Nightscale Matriarch.
See a lot of those.
Yeah. And as Priest, because of these increases in buckets, it means you're also seeing a lot more of the neutral cards that are in this bucket than you used to see, even if you don't see the class cards. So that means more Primordial Drakes, more Kobold Scalebanes, more Bone Mares, more like Stonehills, Furious Ettins, Basilisk, Kildnir Frostrider, Fireplume Phoenix. And in Warrior, the class card breakdown is Gorehow. Gorehow is the only card in the Warrior that's in the second half of the first bucket. And so it's not affected by the reduction, but it is affected by the class adjust. So you're going to see Gorehows everywhere. If you're playing as Warrior, you can be sure that you're going to be offered at least 1 Gorehow. You can even build that into your draft. And the other cards you're going to see a lot of are Gem-Studded Golem, Kurikron Elite, Fiery War Axe, Lesser Mithril Spellstone, which is going to make you very happy, Collins. And
I'm
Brawl.
aware. I mean, I've drafted. I'm aware. There's a ton of spellstones. Yeah. It feels like you get the spellstones. You can make a spellstone deck every time if you want to.
Yep. In fact, I think you see so many spellstones that before, when I was making spellstone decks, I always take spellstone over Fiery War Axe when I get offered it. Yeah, now I think you take Fiery War Axe over spellstones.
The first one.
The first one. Okay. Yeah.
Just the first one.
Because you still need your weapons to support your later spellstones. So that's like I think a practical tip that comes out of this these new changes. All right. Any other like things we should be thinking about as we get back into the like old meta, even though it was only there for like 5 days?
I don't think you can take what you learn in the first couple of days to heart. I think anytime a meta switches, the first couple of days they mean nothing. Like it's not the meta because people are just playing whatever they want, and you just do whatever you feel is best for you. Be comfortable, right? Just don't be like, I have done the research and this is exactly the best class, because even if you're right, like you're not gonna fight what the actual meta is.
No.
So you can still get trounced and you'll be like, oh, this sucks, when it's actually the best thing. But because you're fighting not the right meta and it's going to take some time for it to adapt, you're not going to know. So I think just play what you feel comfortable with. And if that's doing well, then adapt it to your decision making. But until like a week passes and the meta is actually starting to form, don't be too swayed by what you see the first.
Gotcha. All right. So Collins, I hear you. Good advice. Now I'm going to ask you to go against that and tell our listeners once TOT reverts, if they want to win, what should they play and how should they play it?
Collins is like, I just specifically said I do not want to do this.
Yeah, and I was
right.
specifically saying for him to do it.
Okay.
I think Paladin is going to be the easiest if you don't know what to do. Just take the silver swords when you get offered them, and make sure your curve is early enough that you can get the board. Because if you lose the board as a paladin, I feel like you've lost. Like, don't lose the board as a paladin. Like that's so. If you can have like big swords, if you can get a vine cleaver or a silver sword, and you can get the board, your curve is early enough to get the board. It's a fairly easy way to win, because if you have the board and you sword, you win. Like basically. Another good class to play is mage. Even though I don't recommend it, but it's one of the easiest classes to just be like, okay, I see this powerful card, I'll play it, and then make sure that you use the powerful card effectively. So if you get offered a flame strike or a meteor, just make sure you're not meteoring one minion. Like that's not a meteor, that's your frostbolt.
What if it's an ultra sword?
If it's an ultra sword, I'll give you the pass, but that means you're playing in a bracket that in the bucket that people are drafting ultra swords.
Wow.
So you need to work on something.
Wow. Collins is not on the philosophy of see an ultra sword, pick an ultra sword. That's what we've been promoting on our stream for the last week or so.
Yeah,
really?
you see
We've
an
been-
ultra sword, pick an
We've
ultra
been making
sword.
it the
I
ultra
mean,
sword meta.
I can't. Ultra sword is too slow for me. I can't play with it. I play it and then they go face and I lose. So I can't play with the card, right?
Well,
Collins has too many mind controls in his deck to add another 10 mana card.
Collins, no. Let me pose this question: is Ultra Sword too slow for you, or are you too slow for Ultra Sword?
You're right.
Oh, think about that. That's pretty deep, right? Yeah, you think about that for a while.
I'm pretty fast sometimes, actually. I can run.
Okay. All right.
But I see your point.
You should not see my point.
Murph has no point.
Wrong. You were tempted. You failed.
I need to adapt my play style to kind of incorporate a little ultra sword into my life. Yeah, it's because anytime I see ultra sword, chat's like, pick ultra sword. So I picked ultra sword, and then I have this ultra sword in my hand while I kill the enemy. And I'm like, I can't play this card. It doesn't. I play and I lose, so I can't. And after doing that a couple of times, you're like, let me just not take. So it's kind of a learning process. So paladin mage, and then I would say maybe a final class. I can't recommend. I would say maybe go back to rogue. Oh no, warlock. There, yeah,
warlock.
Final class warlock, because you can always do well if you pick an aggressive warlock and use your taps correctly. I think that class can always be good, because the ability to generate card advantage on a whim, as long as you're using your tempo correctly, is very powerful. So I think Paladin, Mage, Warlock will do well.
And just another thing about Warlock. Siphon Soul as a rare spell, because all rare spells in the high buckets are like this, is still bugged. You still see way too many of them, and it is not in the very top half of the first bucket. It's in the second half of the top bucket. So you're still going to see plenty of Siphon Souls, and that is one of those cards where if it gets bucketed weirdly, all of a sudden Warlock gets a lot worse because it's their only like hard removal. And it is fine. It is alive and well. Okay.
They have Unwilling Sacrifice.
They do have Unwilling Sacrifice. That is true. That is a hard removal.
Yeah. It's not great, but I mean, if you're aggressive, it's actually useful, right? You trade a 1-drop for whatever their 7-drop or something. So I guess you're trading 4 mana for whatever they're playing. But in general, it can be tough to play, especially if you're going like control or something. Anyways,
so this is what I love about looking at the bucket. So this is like the spreadsheet. You can find a link. Like Taro maintains it. If you look at Warlock, and this is how you can tell Blizzard's not doing a very good job with these like bucketing, because
I know the buckets are wrong.
It's not just they're wrong; they're like systematically wrong. So one of the things Blizzard does is they bucket stuff based on with the win rates, right? But the neutral cards are all bucketed based on overall win rate of all classes, whereas the class cards, that makes no sense. Yeah. So besides the fact that you have things like Stonehill being totally under bucketed in Paladin, which causes a ton of problems, but you also see the effect where now when they're trying to figure out like win rate buckets and they're starting to compare it with the other cards in the bucket, every single card, Warlock card, in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and 5th, and 6th buckets.
Okay.
So that's all the buckets where you could be in the bottom half of the bucket, and we have enough data to like figure it out. All of them are bucketed in the 2nd half of that bucket. Why? Because it's Warlock. Neutral cards are better in Warlock than in other classes. So when compared to neutral win rates in Warlock, these other cards all don't do as well as Blizzard had wanted them to do. So if you were drafting Warlock before, and I think you kind of noticed it, you were always picking many more like regular minions than when you are picking from other classes, because that's how the bucketing worked. This is why your like Vulgar Homunculus was going against like a Hildnir Frostrider. Vulgar Homunculus is not as good as a Hildnir Frostrider. But if you look at the average win rate of Hildnir Frostrider, and then you look at the win rate of Vulgar Homunculus in Warlock, that probably look roughly equal. But Hildnir Frostrider is way better in Warlock than it is in other classes. Just because it is a minion that is like small enough in mana cost. So it was just it was interesting to me that when they did the middle buckets, this like literally every single card from the 2nd bucket to the 6th bucket, that's very consistent, and it just shows that how Blizzard bucketed neutral cards versus class cards, it doesn't really work.
Yeah, like when you see Hench, Clan Thug, and Rogue, and you're like, oh, this is a weird bucket. I guess I will take this Thug. My deck. It's like, it doesn't make sense. Why aren't you next to Sap and Valsfine? Because you're literally that strong. But it because of the neutral rates, it makes things wonky.
Yeah. And if you want to look at it from the other way, because there are a lot of classes like Warlock and whatever other classes that's win rates are in neutral cards. If you take a look at Paladin, for example, more than 80% of their cards are in the top half of the bucket, because their cards are very good compared to how neutral cards do in the average classes, because it's Paladin. So that would mean you bucket everything on the top half of the bucket, and you know, that's not right either. What that really means is that for Paladin, neutral cards should be moved to lower buckets, and their class cards should like relative to their class cards. But Blizzard can't do that, or they haven't done that yet. So hopefully Blizzard will get around to doing that. But this is like, if you're wondering why Paladins are so good, It's not just that Silver Sword is actually misbucketed in the third bucket instead of the first bucket. It's also that there's a systematic reason, and Blizzard can't fix it with micro adjust. I mean, they could, but they have to go kind of crazy with it. And it just goes like when you're designing this kind of stuff, I don't know, like maybe you can't think about it in that way before you see it, but once you see it, it should be really obvious. And I just kind of expected it to be fixed by this point.
It's not designed from an arena streamer, point, because I feel like if you played arena all day, you'd be like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
This is wrong. This is wrong. But since they're like, okay, we need to like make arena more fair. Look at these stats. They're not Vex. How do you fix it? Let's make a bucket. Let's put these cards in there. Okay, let's find the stats for this. Okay, look at this. It's all the stats here. Let's put this all here. Let's put this all here. And they're not thinking, what about this problematic card for that one particular? Ignore it, whatever. Let's just get this done. Let's put this here, here, here. And once you do that enough times and you ship it out and you're like, oh, it seemed to work. Okay, we're good. But the people are like, why is Stonehill here? You're like, it's just like
Collins. Also, you are a one-man like theater. You like I love this. The hand like you pulled me in. I'm like, wow, this is exactly how they balanced it. So, which speaks to how much faith I have. But also, I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good process. You got replicated over there. But yeah, I think that is how they do it, right? Like, we obviously spend a lot of time looking at it. We have a lot of knowledge. We put a lot of thought into it. And maybe it's just sort of, I don't know, asking a little bit too much for them to see it from exactly our point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they would have to like bring in people and get their thoughts and kind of adjust based on it. But the problem is that like they want a wide audience, right?
But it doesn't matter if they want a wide audience or not. This is like just objectively correct or incorrect, right? If they're systematically bucketing all the paladin stuff up and then they realize it and they have to like then use another system to micro adjust paladins down to make up for their other error, like that's not helping anybody. I don't care what kind of player you are. You just don't notice it or care about it if you're a casual player.
That's true. It's like we don't have a loud enough voice to be like, fix this, please. Yeah, but maybe we'll get there.
Oh well, we can hope. So let's move on to the final segment, which we always end with the card good bad. And today for card good bad, we want to do a card that's not in Taverns of Time because we're about to leave the Taverns of Time meta. And this is a card near and dear to Collins' heart. I've seen him use this card to great effect earlier on in Witchwood, and from talking to him earlier, it sounds like he's cooled a little on it. The card is Squashling, and we don't have the Lightforge tier score here because when I looked at it, I realized it was bugged. We have it at a 143 right now. It's not a 143. It was never a 143. It's not a 143. I think it's definitely gonna end up below a 100, but probably like close to it.
Okay, that's fair.
So how do you play Squashling? When do you draft it? What kind of deck do you use it for? And like, what's the thought process with using this card in a priest deck?
Okay, so that's a loaded question. So Squashling is a very unique card because it's statistically bad because you see Voodoo Doctor and you see Squashling. And you're like, why am I paying double the mana for this card? Just because I can play more bad copies of Voodoo Doctor. Why am I paying such a high cost? But if you think about the game states and how enemies win against priests, it's by taking their health. Like sometimes, like that's the common way to win a game. Take the health to 0, right? So with this Squashling, it can be a powerful tool to kind of limit their options in where they cannot just go face because so you can pay even mana, 6 mana and get like 6 attack on the board, right? Or you can pay 10 mana, heal for 10 and get 10 attack on the board, right? That 10 attack can be used to trade favorably, right? So if you play this Squashling, heal up for 10 and then present them, okay, I have 10 damage on the board I can use to trade favorably. They have to stop. They're like, okay, I cannot just go face anymore because I have to deal with this 10 damage that they're going to use to trade favorably. So it gives you a window where the opponent stops their mindset of, okay, let me be super aggressive to, okay, let me control the board for a bit so that I can be aggressive again. And that window, that opportunity that you get, you can use to completely swing the game around. You can hit up a Drake, hit up a Nova, hit up a big taunt that they're not expecting, right? They use their, so it's a very useful card. Also, there's a lot of synergies with this card that you don't really think about until you're playing Priest and you're like, oh, okay. So Matriarch, right? You drop this, they can't kill it, you bump into something with a lot of health, then you squashing, you have a gigantic board out of nowhere. Cleric, right? You can play this card, heal, and draw, just refill your hand, right? Akanai Soul Priest. Oh, you just now deal 10 damage to anything you want and create a gigantic board. It's absolutely filthy. And then there's also just any synergies with heal, happy ghoul, anything with getting full health, just filling up healthy minions, right? Tanky minions. You play a sleepy giant,
Sleepy dragon.
Sleepy dragon.
Oh, all you're thinking about are giants now.
You bump in, and then you're just like, let me just put that back to full. Oh, did you throw all of your minions into that? Oh, let me just put that back to full. sorry. Try again. You know, it's a very flexible card that has a lot of tools to be abused in Priest, where other classes it may not be as efficient. So it has bad stats, but if you can find a way to utilize it, it can be very powerful. Then again, it's a card that is very slow. So if your deck is too slow, which I had an issue with squashing before, where I was just like drafting it every time over everything, I'd find that squash healing for 10 isn't saving you in a lot of cases. Like, you have to have a deck where you can rebound from healing. You can stabilize and then cut out their options by healing for 10. Where you're against a hunter, if they have two Hymens on the board, healing for 10 does absolutely nothing. You wasted your turn. But if you kill their Hymens, then they're hero powering, then you have a taunt, then you heal for 10, it's over. So you have to find a way to make it work, but if you can, it's really powerful.
Yeah.
I love this.
Squashling. Squashling is in the 5th bucket, so it's a pretty low bucket. It's in the same place as Spirit Lash, Thought Steal, Holy Fire, and Reminisce.
That's a lot of conditions, though. But if you can't do that, don't play Priest. Yeah.
So where would you pick this? Squashling or Yeti? First pick. Priest.
So it's Squashling, Yeti. You see, Priest is such a hard class to draft. Because a lot of times...
But this is the first pick here.
I know. Right? A lot of times, I'll be like, what do I feel like today? Do I want to pick a Yeti deck or a Squashling deck? So it's for Priest, I kind of draft like the first 10 cards, whatever I feel like. Then I'll fix the deck based on whatever I feel. So you can have a deck that wins with Yeti. You can have a deck that wins with Squashling. So for me, first pick, it's not like, oh, I want, like, this is by far the best. Like, if it was a mind control, it's easy, right?
Yeah. See a mind control, take a mind control. Sorry, I mean Ultrasaur.
But their power levels are similar enough where it's like, what do I feel like playing today? And, I'll take whatever I want, and then I'll fix the deck. Because if you have a Yeti in the deck, then okay, then I can draft around like having maybe Elixir or something like that. I can draft around maybe having a what's it called? It's not a Spellstone, but like the 4-mana one that revives something.
Eternal Servitude?
Yeah. Where if I have a Squashing in the deck, I'm like, oh, this Servitude's gonna suck in this deck. Right? Where if I have a Yeti, I'm like, okay, I can revive that. So it's kind of like you can pick either, but if it was first pick today, It's on the bucket. That's the problem,
Yep,
though, right?
it's not in the
You're
bucket. I gave you something in different buckets.
Yeah.
Because,
yeah,
well,
we gave
mostly
you-
because if I gave you the same thing in the same buckets, I know you like squashling. You're gonna take squashling over most things in the bucket. I'm trying to see if you would take it over something normal in a bucket
if it was
higher
like
than that.
squashing or the
Like-
seeker, which is basically the, I would take the seeker, but the seeker's
Seeker.
broken, but
What
yeah,
is
but it's
Possibility Seeker.
Oh no. Okay, try this: Grim Necromancer or Squashling. That's actually a choice you would be faced with.
I would take. I don't like Grim Necromancer and Priest.
In Priest,
Yeah,
right?
no, that's
Okay,
true.
Yeah,
That is a
that's
So what?
pretty bad
It
priest.
could be what's the Corpse Disciple, Curse Disciple, and Squashing first.
Yeah, that's true. Cursed Disciple, same bucket.
Because I do take that. That's hard.
Yeah.
I have this pick a lot, and these are the picks that stop me, and I have to think about.
Okay.
But first pick, I think I'd take the Squashing because it has more of a high roll potential.
Right. So now you know that when you're getting these like higher buckets, you can make sure that you have your like dragon, your Night Scale Matriarch, right? You'll take that over anything else. You'll take Northshire Cleric over.
But it could
anything
be
else.
second pick, and then it could be like easy Grim Necromancer based on the first pick. So if the first pick's if the first pick's like Elixir or something,
Right.
it's like,
Okay, that's fair.
it's like easy Grim Necromancer because the synergies and like there's a lot of synergies insane. So like pick by pick, your whole drafting with Priest can change dramatically. So I find it the hardest thing to draft. So it's a hard question.
Yeah, and I agree. It is. I always have trouble drafting Priest if I ever want to do something that's not just put stuff on the board and then buff it. That's easy to draft. I know how to draft that. If I'm trying to do anything else fancy with Priest, I have a lot of like questions.
And basically, it's all fancy for me. So it's hard. It's a tough one.
Yeah. So one of the big issues that I find with Priest when it comes to the new bucketing system is, and this is one of those like we talk a lot about how things are bucketed and how that affects how you play things, and Priest has Northshire Cleric and Nightscale Matriarch in the same bucket and even in the same sub bucket, which is kind of terrible because they are the kind of keys to a like on the board archetype where that involves a lot of healing. So if they ever get split up, even just by like half a bucket, I think it makes a card like Squashling, for example, like a lot better because these are your huge synergies, right?
Yeah.
On the bright side, Auchenai Soul Priest is not in that bucket. So the bucket I'm talking about is the second bucket. Auchenai Soul Priest is in the third bucket, which is kind of surprising. I figured it'd be higher, but
I don't.
Okay.
I skip the card all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you take Tortolian Shellraiser over it?
No, I hate that card too. Yeah.
Okay.
It's
All right. The Dark Iron Dwarf.
Yeah, I don't use it in Priest much. So,
Wow, Collins, you just don't like these 4-drops.
so I'd have to I don't have many 4s. I've noticed Priest. I'm like because it's Shadow Madness, and then you'll pain or heal. You'll pain and heal. You'll bump and heal, or you'll madness, or you don't need the 4.
How many 2-drops do you have?
Not many.
Not many at all, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's also really hard to get 2-drops in Priest. You have to sacrifice a lot of space in your deck.
Yeah. But I have a lot of 3s.
Yeah.
So I'll heal the 3 drop.
That's fair. All right. Any last questions, Merps? That was my last one.
I think with this upcoming or you know what, we could transition to a question from the GOAT, and then because I had a question from the GOAT,
Okay.
and I was just gonna ask another variant of that. So
Let's do a question from the GOAT, and let's make Collins answer first.
well, yeah, this is actually specifically for Collins.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, you're not involved in this. Get out of here. No, so basically the question I had was, look, Collins, you do a lot of co-ops, right? You do a lot of co-ops, and you do it with Shady as well, who has a lot of experience with co-ops. Basically for and the arena community, I think a lot of people are recognizing the advantages of co-ops from learning and everything. give our listeners some tips on how to effectively do a co-op, because there's so much skill and so much patience involved in it, right? Can you tell us a little bit about your process and how you found like the synergy and the chemistry with Shady?
Okay, so co-ops they're kind of tricky to implement because it's two different players with two different mindsets
Right.
clashing together, trying to find the optimal play. I feel you have to let someone. I feel like you have to let someone take a lead in the conversation where it's a turn starts. You're thinking, okay, what do I want to do, right? So if you're like bouncing back and forth, it's going to be very hard. You're going to be roping every single time. So I feel you have to establish a line, suggest a line, see if the person can improve on it, and then refine it and then go. So you make sure that you are always thinking about, okay, what can we do, right? So you're not, because if you're not thinking about the play itself, you're not really playing, you're kind of just letting the other person do what you got. But most of the time, I mean, once you've drafted enough with the same person, you kind of like, you understand the person you're playing with, so you're like, this guy wants to do this but I want to do this, so let me try to make sure that it makes sense for the other person. And anytime rope happen, you have to make sure that you get something done, because there'll be games or ropes where the play is very complicated. Even you're clicking buttons, but it's very like, I have to trade here, make sure to do this, draw first, this is blah 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 blah. So you have to make sure if things are roping, make sure you get something out, because doing nothing is a lot worse than doing a suboptimal play. So you make sure that things are getting done and plays are being moved, because a turn situation can change drastically. Don't be afraid of mistakes. I feel like in a lot of co-ops, if someone makes a mistake, like they shut down, like they're like, oh, I messed up. They're thinking about it two games later. They're like, oh, I made that stupid mistake, we lost that game, it's my fault, blah blah blah. You have to be able to move ahead of that, move past it. It kind of requires like good mindsets, or like if you're trusting the person you're co-oping with, then it's easy to move past it. Oh, these things happen, but make sure that you don't shut down, because you're not even helping. You're actively making the co-op worse, because instead of providing your insight, you're just like, yeah, okay, whatever. But, so those things happen frequently enough, where make sure that even if things aren't optimal, you just you move ahead, because it's all a learning experience, right? We're trying to get better, and the other person's trying to get better. We're trying to help each other. So even if it's not perfect, as long as you can be there, be mindful, put your thoughts in, the co-ops will do well.
Yeah,
so.
And I think
that's really good advice. Like, it just and to take the sports analogy, you can miss like 3, 5, 10 shots in a row. You still have to keep shooting, right?
Mhm.
Like, you still have to have the confidence in yourself. Like, you're there for a reason. Hopefully, you've paired up with someone who is like approximately equal in skill, right? And that's the way it should be. And you have stuff to offer, and you just have to confidently, sort of like, just forget, move past the fact that you might have made a mistake. I do that all the time. I never think about any potential mistakes. Number one, because I'm perfect, and number two, Avatil will harp on it for the next 10 minutes.
That's what I was about to say.
So I obviously don't have to think about it, because Avatil will just keep on reminding me of it. So that's the synergy that we have here.
This is what I was saying. Like, if you watch our co-ops, like the Arena Coop or whatever, whenever like me or Merps make a mistake, we could talk about it. We could move on and not talk about it. But regardless, the next play doesn't suffer because of it, because we're still thinking independently about the other play. I could keep harping on Merps for like 5 plays afterwards, but whenever
Right,
each
and
play
he
comes
does.
on, and I do, but whenever each play comes on the next turn, he's giving me his insight on that, and I'm evaluating that, like, independently from whether I thought he made a mistake 5 turns ago or not, right? Like,
Right, and
that's
he
not
gets
coloring.
right back
Yeah,
to
then I
being
go
a
right
jerk.
back to it. Exactly.
There you go.
But it's separate, right? So it goes both ways. Like, if you're the person who either made a mistake or who, did not make a mistake, but someone thinks you made a mistake, or just you didn't make a mistake, you made the play that would have been right 75% of the time, but it turns out your opponent just happened to have the card that, 25% of the time will completely destroy you, and everybody feels very sad because they went with your, move and, like, it didn't work out. You gotta keep contributing into this in the same exact way. And if you're the person who went with the other person's play and you were, like, let down or something, you also have to keep taking the other person's opinion at the same value. Like, don't let the play before distract you, either in continuing on with confidence in your play or in continuing to listen to your co-op partner. Like, what's done in the past is in the past. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong when it comes to the next play.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
So, Collins, a follow-up question, and this comes from my experience co-oping, mostly with Educata, sometimes with, like, coaches or something. Whenever, and this is, like, the approach I have going into co-ops as well. Just because of the differences in playstyle that you highlighted at the beginning, I always tend to think of it in terms of, like, this isn't, like, really a 50-50 draft in play. It's like a 60-40 or sometimes even like a 70-30.
Probably more like 70-30.
Yeah, in which, both people contribute. And for example, if we go with, like, Adukta's sort of way of playing, I will always say, here's what I would pick. And then, obviously because he has the mouse, he can pick whatever he wants. He can just go pound sand. We're picking this card. But
See
also,
an Ultrasaur, pick an Ultrasaur.
Well, wait, I was the original subscriber of the idea, obviously. There's no VODs saying, like, of me saying the Ultrasaur is bad. But, like, essentially, I pitch, it doesn't take away from my pitches, right? I pitch the exact same thing. I tell what I would do, but also, once the style kind of changes and I recognize that, I try to provide a lot of things that is needed when we do a co-op. Just sort of a lot of considerations, right? I make sure that Adult is making the same reads as me. Maybe he missed out on something. Turn planning, all of that stuff. I'm wondering your views on that, sort of like the split and how how you think of sort of distributing tasks and distributing responsibility, if there is any.
I feel like, okay, in the drafts, so I co-op with a lot of shit, and we have, like, a distinct style, even though it's, like, it's blending together because of how many co-ops we do. But at the end of the draft, we kind of, like, decide on the best style for the draft, and then we go along with it. And if it's more aggressive, Shady kind of takes the helm, and I kind of look at all the extra stuff, because there's always, like, a clear line based on instinct that you want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like you'll put out the instinct play, and I'll review it and then see, does that actually make sense? If I have an issue with it, then I'll be like, okay, what about this? You're not considering this. And then it was like, okay, yeah, I wasn't, and then you'll like update the play based on it. But there is kind of like someone feeding the main thoughts and then adjusting based on what's being fed in that say. And I think 70-30 is a good is like an accurate representation of kind of what's being done. So if it's like maybe like a control style, I'm kind of like this, and like, oh yeah, what about? And then it's like, this turn we can kill him, and I'm like, you're right, we can kill him. Damn it, all right.
I guess we'll stop playing with our food.
Yeah, so it's kind of like there is a leader in terms of directing where the game is going and the draft is going, and then the other person's kind of helping facilitate and refining the process that the other person does. So I do agree with the split and the.
But just trust the process, man. Trust the process.
Yeah.
No, I think that's helpful, and I think the two things that we focused on today, just having confidence, keep on moving on, and sort of establishing roles, and like this is very important at the beginning, just because, and especially if you are someone who is trying to find a co-op partner, and you're meeting for the first time, and it's like an awkward first date, right? And you're not exactly sure how much you should sort of push the issue, saying like this is my play, like but it's something that definitely will smooth itself out over time as well, and things will get faster as well, right? Like
that helps so much when the speed picks up.
With myself and Adukta, like a lot of times I won't say like quite a few things that have to do with the board or with our situation, or I just use like one pronoun and he gets it, right?
Same thing here. Which I can just be like just 2-3 in there, and that's like that. Then he knows the rest of the play. It's like right, or he'll be like, okay, so we're gonna do the thing first, but then afterwards, and then like blah blah, and then we both know
it's very helpful for teaching our viewers when they watch the Arena Coop on YouTube. I'm like, so we do the thing, right? Like, no, don't do the thing. What? Oh, so we do the other thing. Yeah, okay.
right. And that will work itself out. But it's nice to get your perspective, Collins, on this, because you and Shady,
there aren't that many.
Endangered species here.
Endangered species, the people who co-op a ton, because we started like co-oping as like a thing, a regular thing, but you guys definitely co-op like way more than we do these days. Well, partly because of your very high volume of arena runs. I did not realize you would do 80 arena runs over the span of 3 weeks. Jeez.
It's probably more than that, to be honest. But
well, look, you know what, Collins? It's about quality, not quantity, okay? All right, and by quality, I don't even mean 12 wins, because I know you get a lot of those. Just don't ask me what quality I mean. It's just like, don't. Okay. Forget it. We're nearing the end of this podcast.
All right.
I do have a question for you guys, just a quick question. Like, what's your favorite Taverns of Time card that they released?
Stasis Dragon. Stasis,
There's
more Stasis Dragons. I want all the Stasis Dragons in this next meta. Because, like, Collins, like, whenever they make these kinds of things, they're just testing out ideas, right? It'll come out, like, a year from now in some other, like, expansion. So I want, like, the Stasis Dragon expansion, where there's, like, 3 neutral cards and, like, 2 class cards that have that effect.
What about you, Merv?
So here's the thing. Because of Giants, Possibility Seeker was terrible, right? It was frightening.
I agree.
But I will say Possibility Seeker is an interesting card. I think the design itself, okay, so first of all, Possibility Seeker for Constructed would be busted.
Yeah, I was about to say they'll never publish that card.
They would never publish that card. But for something like the Arena, it's super interesting. And if you just think about the application, like the amount of ways in which you like like you have to plan everything out, and it's like you have to weigh. It's like, okay, I already have my polymorph at hand, but all my other cards are crap. What is the weight of this polymorph versus the other 5 cards getting sort of getting shuffled back in, and me drawing the cards. So I think Possibility Seeker, because of the increase in Giants, it was just like, oh god, this, like, it got associated with, like, the bad meta. But I liked it. I think by itself, without the Giant, it is an extremely well designed card for the Arena.
Yeah, I like those answers. My favorite card is Bronze Broodmother.
What?
The Paladin 5/5 that generates a 1/1 when you draw it.
I love it. I love the card. Okay, well, I maybe have a bit of bias, because there's an exact copy of this card in another game, another card game that I've played before. So it's like, it's the same
which card game?
Eternal.
Okay.
But I played a lot of Paladin. And every time I got to draft it, every time I came on the board, regardless of who played, I'm like, yes, it's so the 1/1's so good here. I'm like every single time. So I just like the design of the card that you're not even like doing anything and you get bored. Like, can you imagine if all of my cards were like that in Priest, and I'm just like, I just draw the card and I get a 2/2. I draw the card, I get, and I don't have to do anything, and I'm just like, oh. I passed my turn playing nothing, and I'm contesting your cards. It would be fantastic. But
Collins, I am so glad you do not design this game and just play it.
but anyways, I like the card.
Yeah. It was one of those cards that had a higher win rate than I thought it was going to be on HS Replay, so it definitely does have that kind of value too. All right, well, Colin, so we're about to end the podcast. What would you like to impart upon our listeners as your last bit of wisdom and a little bit of promotion for, I know you stream on twitch.tv/EducatedCollins, and you stream in like the mornings and afternoons in like normal US time.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. It's whatever. I want to say that you should be good to the people around you, honestly, because there are a lot of trials and tribulations that everyone goes through, and it can be very easy to impart like your frustrations from the day, your frustrations from your situation onto others. But if you can understand that everyone struggles and everyone goes, through difficulties, if you can just be nicer, be kinder, impart a little generosity with every single person, you'll find that it's not too hard to be, a positive, happy person. If you just take the little bit of effort, it's not too hard. So if you're just being kind and just be good to others, I think things will go well for you. So that's just like what I want to say for everyone. That's
Good message.
Yeah,
Good
that's
stuff.
all. Yeah, all right.
Also, please shout out your Twitch channel.
Why?
It's
If
twitch.tv/EducatedCollins.
to find me, you'll find me, right? Like, I don't want to be.
Ooh.
You know what? I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try to just Google Collins right now, because that's what we've been calling you on this podcast. And Collins on Twitter is Senator Susan Collins, who will not support the Supreme Court pick hostile to abortion rights. Tells me Google News.
Keep trying.
All right.
No, Collins, thank you so much. This has been great. It was awesome getting someone with tons of TOT experience and also tons of co-op experience on to tell us how TOT was, and then to set us up for what goes on afterwards.
It's always awesome to talk to Collins too. Just a great guy.
Okay.
All right. Well, until the next Lightforge, this is Adwicta.
This is Merp. See you guys.
And this is Collins, EducatedCollins, Twitch.tv.
Yeah!
Done! And that's a wrap, guys. All right. I like it. I like